Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Namaskar, good afternoon. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, we stopped yesterday at this sloka number 7, which said, "He who cannot even be heard by many," we worked on that, tried to explain, "who many even hearing do not understand, wonderful or wondrous he is he who can teach about him, and skillful is he who finds him." Instead of him, you can also use it if you like. "And wondrous is he who knows even when instructed by the wise." That's where we stopped. We did a good deal of explanation on that, I think. We don't need any more explanations. I think so, because we examined it carefully and said, because it cannot be heard by the ordinary instruments of perception or seen by the ordinary. Therefore, when somebody describes it, you may hear the words, but you may not understand what it is. So the only way of finding it is through negating everything that you know, so that in the end there is only the knower left. And according to Upanishad, that knower is that which you are searching for. Anyway, the eighth sloka that follows is na nare na narena varena prokta esha suvijnayo bahuda chintyamanah ananya prokte gatir atra nasti aniyan hi atarkyam anuprasamanat. Taught by an inferior man, he cannot be truly understood, as he is thought of in many ways, unless taught by one who knows himself as himself. There is no going towards it, because it is unconceivable, being subtler than the subtlest. Now, taught by someone who has not understood it, who has not experienced it, which means an inferior man, that's the definition here. It cannot be understood, because that which we are looking at is thought of in diverse ways. So it's difficult to put one finger there and say this is what it is. Unless taught by one who knows him as himself, someone who has understood and experienced that which you are looking for, the eternal truth, is actually is yourself, your true self, free of all limitations and conditionings. There is no way it can be known. Why? Because it is inconceivable by the ordinary mind, because it is subtler than the subtlest. Now, this makes it even more difficult for us. If it is taught by someone who does not understand this, then it cannot be understood. But if someone who has experienced or understood that what he is looking for is in essence your own true self, one's own true self, then there is some understanding. Otherwise, there is no going nearer to it. Why? Because it is inconceivable by the ordinary mind, being subtler than the subtlest. It's almost like trying to catch hold of an electron and dissect it. It's not possible. If all your five senses cannot reach it, the mind usually survives on the information coming from the five senses. If your five senses are not powerful enough or capable enough to touch that, then is there any possibility of touching it at all? Yes, when one understands that this is conceivable and perhaps understandable, perhaps, when instruments other than the five senses are in operation. So, which leads us to the link that there are other other instruments of perception in the human system, which when activated, one can perhaps get an idea of what this is all about. As long as we are working only with the parameters and the experiences available to us through the five senses, it is not possible to touch that. Okay. There are actually some experiences in our life, even ordinary life, normal life, which cannot be defined or expressed or logically understood. For instance, love and compassion. Now, love and compassion, there is no logical, normally life is like you give me something and I give you something in return. This is the business of life. But if there is some mind or some person who gives without thinking of receiving anything, let's say, who has so much compassion, even if you say you're going to kill him, he is very merciful towards you. And he is absolutely compassionate, he or she. If there is such a person or such a being, you cannot put that person or that being into the framework of ordinary give and take. I'm trying to make you understand this. Maybe I'm an inferior man, so you cannot understand. I don't know. But I'm trying to put in something which is not ordinarily looking very logical. Because, why? Now here is the catch. Because all our logic and rational, so called, is based entirely on the data and that is fed to the mind or the brain, whatever you want to call it, by the five senses. Tell me anything that is not part of that. When we say something is logical, something is rational, it means I am depending on the data inputs that come from my five senses, which are the only senses I have, instruments of perception, which are fed into my brain or mind, and then the mind or brain manufactures a blueprint out of it, and I say this is my rational blueprint or my logical blueprint. Now what happens? If suppose there is something which cannot be understood through the inputs of these five senses, which as we have studied earlier, many a time could be wrong impressions, many a time the inputs could be illusionary, many a time imperfect, at best it can be imperfect. Now any logical or any rational blueprint that can be built out of this cannot understand the absolute, because it is very relative. The whole inputs are relative and conditioned. When this is understood properly, then perhaps the mind rests for a while and says, maybe these inputs are not what are required, there may be something else. And the opening up of that something else in traditional terms has been defined as the opening of the wisdom eye. It's not a physical phenomenon. It comes from the understanding that there is an intuitory instrument in the human mind or brain which need not depend on the conditioned responses that are inputs coming from the five senses. Even if you completely accept the inputs, that cannot touch that undefinable thing that we are talking about. However, the good news is that it is none other than the witness in its pure form in all of us, which is watching everything. The consciousness in its pure form, unattached to the inputs of the senses, remaining intact, is what the reality is all about. In that state, one sees that things are quite different from what we think they are. That things are, there is no question. There are, everything is there. But the things which are may not be what we think they are. The isness is there, but that it is this or it is that may not be correct. May not be. It is, something is there of course, but it is not what our senses define it to be. When this is understood, then what is understood. And what is what the Upanishad is looking for, what Nachiketa is looking for. Why what is? Because that which is always is and never dies or never is reborn, never, nothing happens to it. This is what Nachiketa is looking at. Okay, let's go to the next. Now the ninth shloka is even more worrisome and difficult. Why they made it so complicated, I don't know. Anyway, here you are. It says, Naisha tarkena matir apaneya proktan enaiva sujnanaya prashtaha yam tvam apas satya dhritir vatashi twadrin no bhuyan nachiketa prashtaha. Not by reasoning is this apprehension attainable. Through reasoning by yourself, this apprehension cannot come to one. But, dearest Nachiketa, taught by another who has touched it, in brackets, it is well understood. Now you have obtained it. Hold fast to the truth, Nachiketas. And Yama says, may we find, Nachiketas, an inquirer like you. We are fond of inquirers like you. Let's find another one like you. Which means, not by reasoning is this apprehension attainable. Because we just discussed this for the last so many classes, that our reasoning is very conditioned and very limited. Why? Because all our reasoning is formed out of the inputs that come to us from the imperfect senses. Therefore, what we call reasoning in general may look very nice and rational, but it may not be accurate, because the only inputs we have are the five senses, and there we know that they can give wrong information, they can give incomplete information, and so on, and therefore from these inputs what the mind or the brain cooks up cannot be complete. And here we are looking for something that is complete, purna, full. Therefore, the Upanishad says, not by reasoning is this apprehension. If somebody says by lot of reasoning I will touch that, my reasoning itself is not perfect. So how do I go there with reasoning? My reasoning is dependent on the imperfect inputs that I get from my senses. Therefore, the reasoning itself is flawed. Therefore, some people said faith is enough. Forget, dump this reason. I am not saying that. I am just saying that my reasoning itself being flawed, should I not suspect that it may not lead me to that which is perfect? Okay. Now, you cannot suddenly jump like that and say that. So, therefore, in the practical workings of the Upanishads, which is the practice of sadhana, meditation, etc., what we do is try to go beyond the ordinary mind. Now, to go beyond the ordinary mind, you need to still the mind. A mind is always active, running here and there. 1 second it is here, next second it is somewhere else. In that situation of the mind, which works on the data fed by the sense instruments, 5 instruments of senses, it is not possible for such a mind to touch that quietness, peace and calmness that constitute the eternal being that we seek according to Upanishad. So, therefore, not through reasoning, but by a quiet, tranquil mind is it formed. That much you can reason. My reason can take me up to the state where I say, through this it doesn't seem dal nahi galegi. Then what should I do? Maybe if I am quiet and not running up and down trying to figure out, in that calmness perhaps a spark could occur, which could take me somewhere. And this calming of the mind from all movements and distractions and opposites and tensions is the aim of the practice of meditation. This is what I was trying to say yesterday, that the study of the Upanishad is not merely studying a material object. It is very closely related to myself as a living being. It's not just a material instrument. You can have an agitated mind and still do quantum physics, but you cannot have an agitated mind and touch that is the essence of quantum, which is the consciousness, the self. So that the mind needs to be quiet. So, not through ordinary reasoning, but through understanding, which also is reasoning of course, certain reasoning, that it cannot be found through thought processes, because our thought processes are very limited. Perhaps when the thought ceases to function in the usual way of going out, instead when it turns in, perhaps there is a possibility that in our hearts, not the organ that pumps blood, not that heart. When I say heart of the matter, what in Sanskrit is called hridaya, what the Sufis call the qalb. It's not the heart that's sitting here. No, that organ dies with death. But the heart of the core of the matter, the heart of the matter. When everything is quiet, perhaps then it is understood, not through any other reasoning. But reasoning is required to understand this much, please understand. Nobody is saying put all your reasoning in the freezer. No, 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 no. A subtle mind and a subtle intelligence is required to find this. When it is found out, you realize that it's of no use now. Till then it's very useful. So, not by reasoning is this apprehension attainable, but when taught by another who has understood this, then it is understood. You have found it, Nachiket. Hold fast to this truth, don't let go. And Yama says in praise of Nachiket, may we have enquirers like you, O Nachiketas. We are so happy to see you. Are you? When you see these young faces, I think many Nachiketas are here. We don't know how many we'll find, but whatever. Now there is one verse which some commentators have attributed to Nachiketas and some have attributed to Yama himself. It doesn't matter. Let's read the verse. The verse says, Janami aham shevadhir iti anityam nahi adhruvya prapyate hi dhruvam tat tatho maya nachiketas achito agnir anityer dravye praptavan asmi nityam. Now let me read just the translation first. Then we'll think whether it is Yama saying it or Nachiketa saying it. Different commentators have said different things. I know that wealth is impermanent. Not through such transient things can you reach that. You can have as much money as you like in the bank, but you cannot buy the truth. Satya cannot be bought. Truth, haq cannot be bought, cannot be purchased. Hakikat is the Urdu word for truth. No? You can't buy it. Satya is the Sanskrit word for truth. And the Vedic saying is Satyameva Jayate, ultimately the truth wins. Well, it's there in all our offices, but we don't know how it works there. Have you tried to go to government or get something done? Satyameva Jayate. Truth alone triumphs. In most cases, money triumphs. Anyway, from small to big. You have to change it, of course, it's in your hands. The young are the people who can bring about change. Say no, I will go according. Then you'll suffer, of course, naturally, but it's okay, doesn't matter. So, I know that wealth is impermanent. Not through transient things is that abiding one reached. And therefore, by me is laid the Nachiketas fire. What is the Nachiketas fire? By impermanent means I have reached the everlasting. Now, trying to reach the everlasting or the supreme reality is still within the mind circuit. Trying to reach, trying to understand. Still we are in the compartment called the mind. It's only when you have fully understood that you get out of the impermanent, then you are in the permanent. Till then, even the reasoning which we are doing now belongs to the realm of the impermanent. So, through the impermanent, which is looking at talking to Yama and trying to find the answers, Nachiketa says, I have reached the permanent, that which is beyond. Now, this you must understand carefully if you look. The only faculty which we have, by which that which cannot be easily understood perhaps could be understood, are words. We don't have any other faculty. Words are limited, of course, but without words you cannot express even the inexpressible. When I say inexpressible, I am using words to say that I can't do it, but it is so. There are many things in life which we cannot really understand or define in words. Not only the Brahman. Can you define your affection towards somebody? How will you? What is this? There are two young people standing in the bus stop and looking at each other, maybe each other's eyes, I don't know where, whatever, long time, as if in a dream. You ask them what's happening here, what's going on. अरे वो define it, no? ये कुछ कुछ होता है, अरे क्या होता है? Even the simple emotions we cannot define really. These are very simple, matter of fact, we cannot define. Imagine trying to define that, which is the essence of the feeling of love, for instance. Here the feeling of love is directed to a person, I understand, so it's limited. Now imagine it being one whole, where it is part of the whole world, this whole universe. How can we define that universal love? You can't define it. You can say, I cannot define it, and therefore define it with words. That's all you can do. But words are important. Without words, you cannot even say this, what I am telling you now. So therefore, words were given so much importance till the time came when words became more important than what we are trying to figure out. That is the problem. When everything gets too organized, the essence is gone. Yeah. Let me explain it. I want to please let's go slowly. Don't worry. I want you to two small stories. One. This is relevant to what we are saying. That's why I am saying this. In all the Eastern Abrahamic religions, there is a distinction between the devil, Satan, and God, two opposite poles. In the Hindu system of thought, there is no such actual division, because some asuras are supposed to be good, some rakshasas are supposed to be great, some devas are supposed to be terrible. So that distinction has not been drawn, saying that good can be anywhere and bad can be anywhere. There is no such distinction. However, in some teaching, some religions, there is this distinction. Satan is bad and God is good. Okay, fine. So the story is that one day Satan, who is the devil himself, went for a walk. So he went for a walk with his very close friend, we don't know who, went for a walk. So suddenly Satan bent down, picked up something from the lawn and put it in his pocket. So his friend who was walking near him said, "Hey, what did you pick up just now?" So Satan said, "I just picked up the truth." So his friend said, "What? Then your days are numbered, because you are the opposite of truth. Your falsehood, your darkness, your evil. You just picked up the truth and put it in your pocket. You're finished now. Your time is going to end soon." So the devil smiled and patted him on his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, friend, I will organize it." I hope you get what I'm saying. So the essence of it is gone. I want to quote another story. There was a great Sufi teacher from the Naqshbandi order, whose name was Bahauddin Naqshband. He is on record, it's very interesting. He said, if after 200 years you still see a Sufi order surviving, believe me, there is only the shell, the essence has vanished. You know, I hope you understand what we are trying to say. The externals become more important, then the internal is gone. If I get too much caught up in the outer descriptions, then I miss what is in the essence. It's very simple, quite okay. So, I know that wealth is impermanent. Some people say Nachiketa said this. I think Nachiketa said this. Yama need not have said this. I know that wealth is impermanent, not through transient things, impermanent things is the abiding one reached, which is permanent. Yet by me is laid the Nachiketa's fire. What is that? The fire of desire for understanding the truth, the Nachiketa's fire. And by impermanent means, we are all going through impermanent means right now. Especially online is very impermanent. It will go off in another half an hour and that's it. And through impermanent means have I reached the everlasting. The question is, if you reach the everlasting, it will be nice. Means are impermanent. Then Yama says, this nobody has a controversy that it is Nachiketas. Yama says, having seen the fulfillment of all desire, the support of the world, the endless fruit of all rituals, the other shore where there is no fear, the greatness of fame, the far stretching, the foundation of everything. O wise Nachiketas, you have steadfastly let them go. Let them go means let go of all things which are not important. Nachiketas, having seen the fulfillment of all desire, kamasyaptim jagataha, pratishtham krator, anantyam abhayasya param, stoma mahat urugayam, pradishtham drishtva dridhaya, dhiro nachiketa atyashrakhishyah. That means you have understood, O Nachiketas, having seen the fulfillment of all your desires, all your kamas are now fulfilled because you have touched that for which secretly the mind is always longing for. The ultimate happiness which we long for, the ultimate bliss which one is looking for in everyday life. You have discovered that now all your desires have been fulfilled. What is desire? Fulfillment of a desire. I want to make myself happy. So I want to attain something. This is my desire, kama. And when it is fulfilled, another desire crops up. One is finished, the other one comes. You have now found that because of which you will have no other desire. You the fulfillment of all your desires you have happened. Why? Because you have found the support of the world. It is this which everybody seeks through all the rituals that they do. Ritual need not necessarily mean a Vedic ritual. All the rituals we go through in life. Don't you see how ritualistic life is? Early morning we get up because we are English educated and say good morning. Maybe a terrible morning. It's a ritual. So we have made life into a series of ceremonials, rituals. So you have now seen through all that. All that we do, why? To find happiness, to fulfill your desires. You have fulfilled your desires and reached the other shore where there is no more fear because you have understood death now. You know that it does not exist. You know why people want to become famous. You have understood the greatness of fame. Why? Because the essence is the only thing that is famous. All other things are useless. The far stretching. The foundation of all that exists that we see is that which you have discovered. And therefore you have let go of everything that is irrelevant to this matter. Says Yama to Nachiketas. Now again, another little parable. You can only teach in parables, especially things like this. I don't know whether I said this before, but if I said this, I will still repeat it once more. There used to be a great weaver saint in India. Anybody knows? Kabir. There was a weaver saint who lived in Banaras whose name was Kabir Das. He sung many songs, many dohas. He used to sit the whole day at his loom and make cloth and sing. Because perhaps like Nachiketas, he had touched something which is beyond. And one of his dohas, his songs, is about the musk deer. You know, in the Himalayas, upper Himalayas, there is a particular variety of deer which is called the Kasturi Mrga, the musk deer. The Kasturi Mrga, the musk deer, it has a little pouch under his belly. And in one season in the year, that produces musk in that little gland, it produces musk under his belly. So there's beautiful fragrance in the air, wafting in the air. Now this poor deer, not knowing the source from where the fragrance comes, goes looking for it everywhere in the external world and doesn't find it till the end. Probably bleeds because it puts its snoot into thorny bushes, but it doesn't know that this fragrance is coming from under my belly. Kabirdas said, this is the state of the human beings in general. If you would only go look within and go to the root of your being, which is inside you, the fragrance is the fragrance which we call happiness, which we seek through so many desires. Why do you do something? Because I want to be happy. Why something else? Because I want to be. Why do you do something? Because I want to be more happy. That happiness, the source of that happiness, that musk, Kabir said, is within you. And you are looking for it everywhere outside. If you only turn around and look within, you will find that the essence, the fountainhead of all fragrances is inside you. When the mind is absolutely quiet and calm, but all your attention is in that center, then you find the essence. So therefore, Yama says to Nachiketas, since you have come and understood that, and come to the other shore where there is no fear, there is only happiness. There is nothing to lose because you are yourself that, your essence. Therefore, having touched that, now you have let go of things which are irrelevant to this, to the main search. Tam durdarsham gudham anupravishtam guhahitam gahvareshtam puranam adhyatma Yogadhigamena devam matva dhiro harsha shvako jahati. Realizing through self-contemplation, that primal God, that supreme being, difficult to be seen, deeply hidden, set in the secret place, dwelling in the deep, the wise leave behind both joy and sorrow. Let me explain the last sentence first. The wise leave behind joy and sorrow. Why? Because in this world, all joys are accompanied by some sorrow or the other. I'm not saying you should suspect everything, but believe me, when there is joy, there is some little sorrow lurking behind the pillar. You don't know when it will come, but it can happen anytime. If you are excessively enjoying some food and you are very happy with it, believe me, indigestion is hiding somewhere. If you find something so beautiful in somebody's desk and you want to take it away, believe me, you will be very happy when you take it. But the sorrow of the police is behind you coming. Anything that I enjoy, there is always some compensation to be paid for it, right? I can't enjoy anything without some compensation. Now, paying compensation is not joy, it is sorrow in a way. I have a lot of money and the income tax is coming knocking at my door. I think you ask any single person, are you happy? He say, well, I am, but I'd like to get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or then I'll be happier. Okay, you got one. Then after some time you ask, how, you're very happy now? Oh, in a way, yeah. Why? Because sometimes she gets upset and says, I'm going away with somebody. So sorrow has already come in. I'm not discouraging you from falling in love. I'm just saying, the joys of this world always have somewhere sorrow behind. You lead a full life, but there is still that fear that something might happen. You get a beautiful, fast car, and you love to drive. Sorrow is lurking somewhere. We read that in the papers. So, in this world, joy and sorrow cannot be completely separated. They're like twins, two sides of the same coin. Therefore, says Yama to Nachiketa, you have realized through contemplating on your own score of your own self that supreme being which cannot be seen with the ordinary eyes, which is deeply hidden. Why deeply hidden? In the recesses of the mind when it is free of all distractions. It's hidden there, dwelling in the deep. When the wise touch that and see the joy of it, they leave behind both the joys and sorrows of this world. He's not talking about death. He's talking about finding the treasure and therefore not worrying about the trinkets. Hearing this, hearing what Yama is saying to Nachiketas, hearing this and comprehending it, a mortal, a human being, extracting the essence and reaching the subtle, rejoices, having attained to the source of all joy, like the Kasturi Mriga, unlike the Kasturi Mriga, sorry. I know that such an abode is wide open to you, Nachiketas. Now we have come to the stage where this abode is wide open to you, Nachiketas. You have found that instead of looking out, you will find what you are seeking, the immortality that you are seeking inside by turning in. So this turning in Vedantic terms, is called the Nivritti Marga. And the turning out, which is usually practiced by most of us, is called by Vedanta Pravritti Marga. So the Pravritti and the Nivritti. I think we should stop here today. Yeah, we'll stop at 13. Tomorrow we are going to try to understand the sloka. Nachiketas asks Yama, tell me, that thou seest which is beyond right and wrong, beyond what is done or not done, beyond the past and the future. Tell me about that. So tomorrow we'll go into that. And then the next sloka is about the sound called Om, the mystic word Om. You see the question before that? Tell me that which thou seest beyond right and wrong, beyond what is done or not done, beyond past and future. That means present. Tell me about the present. So let's have some questions.
Namaste, sir.
Yeah.
Hello. Namaskar.
Yes, I can see.
Sir, when you said the mind goes outwards in search of happiness towards objects and desires, so but the fulfillment is not there.
It is there for the time being.
Yes, the permanent fulfillment is not there.
Yes, exactly.
So, so basically, when the mind is not there, is that when the permanent fulfillment? I mean, then what is the point of the mind then?
Wait 1 minute. When the mind, if the mind is not there, you won't even know anything, right? That's like deep sleep. No. When the mind is going to outward objects, it enjoys for some time. We cannot say it does not enjoy, but that is gone after a while. And the very going away of enjoyment is the beginning of sorrow, because then we seek more enjoyment. It's a constant process. We are saying that when the mind has stopped doing that and staying in its own place without going out, then it realizes that this going out was not a very useful act, not a very fruitful act. So it rests, R-E-S-T-S, rests. When it rests, then it understands that the joy that I was seeking outside is right there inside. So it's not that the mind is useless. The mind, when it's in the pravritti marga, outside, is enjoying outside objects which are temporary. It's happiness which is temporary. When it is not and is sitting in his own place without movement, then it sees that the source of the joy that it enjoys is actually inside. Got it?
yes, sir. Yes.
So can we take a few more questions?
Yes, please.
Sir, my question is that like we started this discussion with a question from Nachiketa, like when he was given his third moon, he asked that like what is the answer to the question of death, like is there life beyond death? And but we have been pursuing towards that, but we started about the Shreyas and Prayas, and then we started about looking for joy within. But like at the end, like do we come to the conclusion that like is there a
Yes.
life
We haven't reached the end, no, yet. We are pursuing the question now. We have not even gone to half the Upanishads actually. Yeah. Finally Nachiketas gets his answer to his question.
okay.
Hmm?
And like one more thing, this inner joy which you talked about, is it same as that Anand when you said that in seventh shloka of that Mandukya, that Anandamay,
Yes.
when they were talking about the deep sleeps? So that same Anand is the inner joy within.
All the Upanishads speak about the same thing actually in different ways. So when I said Anandamaya Ananda book, it's the same thing. But it's not the ordinary Ananda that we know which comes and goes, but Anantam Ananda, which has no beginning and no end actually. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Actually, this is like the very first part of this lecture today. You were saying, no, that uh, knowing the knower, finally the situation happens when the knower, the witness gets to know the witnesses itself, right? And so I was just wondering, does it happen in a revelation which is sudden and then you realize, yes, this is the one, or is it that you come to that understanding logically and then later on you find that, well, one experience relates to that?
I feel personally, I think it can happen both ways. It may be that one is trying to find it, and then one realizes this trying to find it itself is a trying. So let's put it at rest and see what happens. Huh? And then it happens. You can't say you can bring it about. You can go to the stage of where you are eliminating all bringing abouts. When you have eliminated all bringing about, there is only that which is. There is one way of looking at it. What happens actually is the mind, when it is not going out, is sitting inside, trying to figure out what it is, and then it realizes after a while, but it should realize by itself. If I tell you, it won't work. It realizes by itself the futility of trying all this circus to find it and becomes quiet. In that quietness, some people call that quietness surrender. In that quietness, the other comes about. The mind cannot bring it about. It comes about when the mind realizes that it cannot bring it about. I don't know, this is the only way I can explain this.
And the follow-up, may I ask a follow-up question on this?
Yes, sir.
Is that if you actually I don't know, I'm not experienced, but if somebody experiences this and comes to that state where they know this is the state which is supposed to be the witness, and they find that state, are they able to continue in that state or in the day-to-day activity, or is it that they break off and then they come back to it when again they sit in quietness?
There are two stages to this. In the beginning, you know it only when you are in a certain stage. Afterwards, it becomes part of your everyday life. It never goes off. It's not like it's something which you caught and it went off. When it is your essential nature, where will it go? It cannot go anywhere. But in the beginning, because of the habits of the mind, when it is in the outside world, it may not experience, although it may remember, a lingering remembrance of it. But as one goes more into this in a regular basis, then it becomes part of your life. It never goes anywhere. But you are able to function in this world, there is no question. But you may not be as functional as somebody who is fully concentrating on functioning, but everything will work. There is no problem about that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I wanted to ask, Atman is basically it is the like it is the personal consciousness, right? It is like me versus the collective consciousness. So how does that play out? The relationship between Atman and Brahman.
Look, it's not only word which you use which is not right is versus. There is no versus. It's simply that the individual, what you call Atman, when it becomes totally quiet, when it's deeply absorbed in itself and is not thinking of anything else, then the distinction between the Atman and the Brahman falls away. When there is only the Brahman, there is no Atman. Atman, now I am talking to you, it requires the Atman to talk to you. Your Atma is talking to me. You can say mind if you like it. It's not really the mind, yeah. Through the mind, the Atman is communicating between. The moment the communication is over and the mind goes back to its quietness, the distinction between the Atman and the Brahman does not exist. There is only the Brahman. The Atman is merely an appearance on its surface, like a bubble that comes and goes. Till that knowledge is acquired, one retains this individuality of the Atman.
Sir, when I realize that when I am able to experience my own self truly, then I understand that there is no distinction between me and everything
Exactly,
outside.
exactly. So there is no finding, there is no going, there is no coming. It's all one.
Yes.
The appearance of the Atman there, what we see, is only like a bubble that forms in the water. For some time it is there and it reflects everything. Then it's gone. Then there is only the flowing water. Dekat hi chip jayega. You watch and it's gone. Kabir said very nicely, Pani kera budbuda, as manushya ki jaat, dekat hi chip jayega jo tara prabhat. You know the star twinkles, one moment is on, one moment is off, like that it will go off. I think Kabir understood the truth. Cannot be otherwise. How could he write without knowing this? Okay.
So actually I was reading some of the work of Sri Aurobindo, and he speaks about how our body and we see through our instruments of perception are extension of the consciousness. So
What?
consciousness is the extension of the consciousness itself. Right? So we're trying to the consciousness is trying to learn through this body and all the material objects. That's what I could infer. So my question is that does the pursuit of life, the context lie in learning from all the joys and sorrows that we see. I mean, is business learning or evolving itself through all the experiences?
When you're using consciousness in this context, we are not talking about the universal consciousness. We are talking about one's conscious self, which through the experience of the world is trying to evolve and learn. When it searches for happiness in something, it's trying to see, is this the way to happiness? It enjoys for some time, say no, this cannot be, then it moves to the other. So, this goes on till it realizes in its full evolved state that the happiness, that the evolution that it sought in the outside world is actually inside. When this movement takes place, then the journey actually begins. Till then there is a journey, but the journey is in the different direction, not in its proper direction. So, in this context, when you say consciousness, it is the mind, the consciousness which we have individually, which is trying to evolve and become more perfect through experiencing the world in this context. But this is not the supreme consciousness. If you read Aurobindo a little more, you will understand this as you go. According to Aurobindo, there is not only an evolution of the human upwards, but there is also a coming down of the supreme downwards, and somewhere midway they meet. I mean, it's a complex theory, but I personally I find it a little difficult to understand. Well, if it's understood, is wonderful, but it's not so easy.
It's very difficult.
I think.
To comprehend.
Yeah, you're right.
Aurobindo is very difficult to understand, actually.
Everybody
I've
agrees.
read several of his works.
Yeah, but that's okay. It's good
Yeah.
to. So, can we call it off now for today? Huh? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Pranam, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.